Listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to share with you is not motivation for a moment. It is instruction for a lifetime. Most people do not fail suddenly. They fail slowly, quietly through neglect. Not because they don't have potential, but because they don't have daily discipline. Your future is not shaped in one great decision, but in 10 small things you either improve or ignore every single day. There is a law in life. Whatever you refuse to improve, you eventually lose. And whatever you commit to refine, you eventually dominate. So, when I talk about 10 things you must improve daily, I am not speaking about ambition. I am speaking about survival, growth, and destiny. When we talk about improving your thinking daily, we are not talking about a motivational phrase you repeat and forget. We are talking about the foundation of your entire existence. Because everything you will ever become in life will first pass through the corridor of your mind. Nothing becomes reality in your hands that was not first shaped in your thoughts. Your thinking is not just a mental activity, it is a creative force. And it is the silent architect of your future. Most people underestimate the power of thought because thoughts are invisible. But invisibility does not mean insignificance. In fact, the most powerful things in life are often the ones you cannot see. You cannot see electricity, but it can light a city. You cannot see wind, but it can destroy or sustain life. In the same way, you may not see your thoughts physically, but they are constantly building or breaking your life in real time. Every day you wake up, your mind is already active. It is producing ideas, interpretations, assumptions, fears, and expectations. The question is not whether you are thinking. The question is what you are thinking and whether you are improving it. Because untrained thinking becomes repetitive thinking, and repetitive thinking becomes a mental prison. Many people are not physically trapped in life. They are mentally confined by the same patterns of thinking they never challenged. Improving your thinking daily means refusing to accept your current level of thought as your final level. It means you develop a habit of questioning your mental assumptions. Why do I believe this? Who told me this? Is this thought producing growth or limitation in my life? These are not casual questions. They are transformative questions. Because the moment you begin to question your thinking, you begin to separate yourself from mental bondage. There is a difference between thinking and upgraded thinking. Thinking alone can be random. It can be emotional. It can be influenced by fear, environment, or past experiences. But upgraded thinking is intentional. It is disciplined. It is exposed to truth, to wisdom, and to correction. Upgraded thinking does not just ask, what do I feel? It asks, what is true? That shift alone can change the direction of an entire life. Many people suffer not because they lack opportunity, but because they interpret opportunity through limited thinking. The same situation that one person sees as a doorway, another person sees as a wall. Why? Not because the situation is different, but because the thinking is different. Your interpretation of life determines your experience of life. And interpretation is born in the mind long before it is expressed in action. If you do not improve your thinking daily, your mind will default to survival mode instead of growth mode. Survival thinking is defensive. It protects comfort. It avoids risk. It resists change. But growth thinking is expansive. It looks for possibility. It seeks understanding. It embraces challenge as a pathway to development. The difference between these two mindsets determines whether you merely exist or actually evolve. Improving your thinking also means being intentional about what you allow into your mental space. Because your mind is not an empty container. It is a constantly fed environment. What you watch, what you listen to, who you spend time with, and what you repeatedly expose yourself to all become raw material for your thoughts. If you consistently feed your mind negativity, fear, and limitation, you cannot expect it to produce clarity, courage, and vision. That is not how the mind works. The mind reflects its input. This is why daily mental improvement requires discipline in your intake. It means choosing information that builds you instead of breaking you. It means learning to step away from noise so you can hear wisdom. It means creating space for reflection, because a mind without reflection becomes overloaded with confusion. Clarity is not accidental, it is cultivated. There is also a deeper layer. Improving your thinking daily means challenging your internal narrative. Everyone has a voice inside their head that constantly narrates their identity. For some, that voice says, you are not enough. For others, it says you will fail again. For others, it says stay small, stay safe, don't try. If you do not challenge that voice, it becomes the authority over your decisions. But when you begin to improve your thinking, you confront that internal narrative with truth, with evidence, and with vision. You begin to replace limitation with possibility. You begin to replace fear with understanding. You begin to replace doubt with disciplined belief, not blind belief, but belief built on growth and learning. That is what mental transformation looks like. It is not a one-time emotional shift. It is a daily reprogramming of how you see yourself and how you interpret life. Improving your thinking daily also requires humility, because you cannot upgrade a mind that refuses correction. Pride keeps people stuck in outdated thinking. It convinces them that what they already know is enough. But growth begins where certainty ends. The moment you become willing to say, maybe I don't know everything, you open the door to expansion. And here is a truth that must be understood. Your current thinking produced your current life. If you want a different life, you must develop different thinking. You cannot repeat the same mental patterns and expect new outcomes. That is not how life works. Transformation always begins with mental renewal. So every day you are faced with a decision. Will I allow my mind to run on autopilot, or will I actively refine it? Will I accept thoughts as they come, or will I evaluate and reshape them? Will I think based on fear, or will I think based on truth? These questions are not philosophical, they are practical, because your answers to them determine your direction. Improving your thinking daily is not about becoming perfect in thought. It is about becoming intentional. It is about refusing mental stagnation. It is about committing to growth in the invisible space where all visible success is born. And when you master that space, you begin to master life itself. Improving your discipline daily is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about becoming dependable to your own destiny. Discipline is the bridge between what you desire and what you actually become. Many people live their lives trapped in intention. They intend to wake up early. They intend to work harder. They intend to change. But intention without discipline is just imagination that never leaves the mind. You must understand this deeply. Discipline is not a feeling, it is a decision repeated over time. Feelings are unstable. They rise and fall like waves. If your life is governed by feelings, then your life will always be unstable. But discipline is stable. It does not ask how you feel. It asks what must be done. And that shift alone is what separates those who talk about success from those who live it. Every great life you admire is built on disciplined repetition of small actions that most people ignore. There is nothing glamorous about discipline in the beginning. In fact, it feels uncomfortable because it challenges your desire for ease. But anything meaningful will always require resistance against comfort. Growth never happens in the zone of convenience. It happens in the space where you decide to do what is necessary even when it is not enjoyable. Improving discipline daily means you must learn to govern yourself before life is forced to govern you, because life always enforces discipline eventually. The only question is whether you will choose it voluntarily or be forced into it through consequences. Every missed opportunity, every delayed dream, every regretful outcome often traces back to a lack of discipline at critical moments. There is a hidden truth about human nature. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your discipline. You may have high aspirations, but your daily habits determine your true level. That is why discipline is not an occasional effort, it is a daily structure. It is what you do when nobody is watching. It is what you choose when there is no external pressure. It is the private consistency that builds public success. Most people struggle with discipline because they misunderstand its nature. They think discipline is punishment, but discipline is actually alignment. It is aligning your actions with your long-term vision instead of your short-term comfort. Every time you choose discipline, you are choosing your future over your present impulse. And that is not easy because the present always feels louder than the future. The present demands attention. The future requires faith. Improving discipline daily begins with mastering small wins. It is not about waiting for a big moment to prove yourself. It is about daily decisions that seem insignificant but accumulate into identity. Waking up when you said you would wake up, finishing what you started, controlling what you eat, managing how you spend your time. These small acts are not small in their effect. They are building your internal reputation with yourself. Because here is something most people never realize. The most important relationship you will ever have is the relationship you have with yourself. And discipline determines whether you trust yourself or constantly disappoint yourself. When you consistently break your own commitments, you slowly lose self-trust. And once self-trust is gone, confidence becomes artificial. But when you consistently keep your word to yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to believe in your own reliability. Discipline also protects your future from your emotions. There will be days when you are tired, days when you are discouraged, days when you feel like quitting. Those moments are not signs to stop. They are tests of identity. Because anyone can perform when they feel strong, but only the disciplined person performs when they feel weak. That is where character is revealed. You must also understand that discipline is a form of freedom, not restriction. Many people think discipline limits their life, but in reality, discipline expands it. Without discipline, your life is controlled by impulses, distractions, and external influences. But with discipline, you take control of your direction. You are no longer reacting to life, you are designing it. Improving discipline daily means building systems that support your growth, not just relying on motivation. Motivation is emotional fuel, but it is inconsistent. Systems are structural support and they are stable. You must create routines that make good decisions easier and bad decisions harder. Because if your environment constantly invites distraction, discipline will always feel like a battle. But if your environment supports focus, discipline becomes natural. There is also a spiritual dimension to discipline. It is the training of your will. Every time you choose discipline, you strengthen your ability to choose wisely in the future. It is like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. The less you use it, the weaker it gets. That is why discipline grows with practice, not theory. And you must be honest with yourself. The cost of undisciplined living is always higher than the cost of disciplined living. Undisciplined living gives temporary pleasure but long-term regret. Disciplined living gives temporary discomfort but long-term peace. Atasiki and tatviche de kamatad. One drains your future, the other builds it. Improving discipline daily also requires you to remove excuses. Excuses are mental justifications for inconsistency. They feel reasonable in the moment, but they are destructive over time. Every excuse you accept weakens your standard. And once your standard drops, your results follow. The disciplined person does not wait for perfect conditions. They act within imperfect conditions. They understand that waiting for the right moment is often just disguised procrastination. Because the truth is, there will never be a perfect moment. There will only be a decision. So, every day, discipline asks you a question: will you do what is necessary or what is convenient? Will you build your future or protect your comfort? Will you become the kind of person who can be trusted with greater responsibility or remain someone who depends on emotion to function? And if you choose discipline daily, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop needing external pressure to perform. You start becoming internally driven. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop delaying what matters. And slowly your life begins to reflect order instead of chaos. That is the power of discipline. It does not shout. It builds quietly. It does not impress immediately. But over time, it produces results that cannot be ignored. Improving your focus daily is one of the most critical battles you will ever fight in your life, because focus is the gateway through which all productivity, clarity, and progress must pass. Without focus, even the most talented person becomes scattered. Even the most gifted mind becomes ineffective. Even the strongest intention becomes wasted energy. Focus is not just about paying attention. It is about deciding what deserves your attention and protecting it with discipline. You must understand something very important. Your attention is your life currency. Whatever you consistently give your attention to will eventually shape your identity, your decisions, and your direction. If your attention is divided, your life will be divided. If your attention is scattered, your results will be scattered. But if your attention is concentrated, your life begins to move with precision and power. Most people underestimate the cost of distraction. They think distraction is harmless because it feels small in the moment. A notification here, a quick conversation there, a few minutes of scrolling, it seems insignificant. But distraction does not destroy you suddenly. It destroys you gradually. It steals your time in fragments, and those fragments accumulate into lost potential. The tragedy is not that people are distracted once in a while, but that they live in a constant state of divided attention and still expect meaningful results. Improving focus daily begins with awareness. You cannot control what you do not recognize. Many people are not even conscious of how often they switch attention from one thing to another without completion. They start tasks but rarely finish them. They move from idea to idea but rarely build depth, and depth is where true success lives. Superficial attention produces superficial results. Deep focus produces meaningful outcomes. Focus is the ability to stay with something long enough for it to produce value. It is resisting the urge to constantly shift your attention to what feels easier or more entertaining. And this is where the battle becomes internal, because your mind is naturally drawn to novelty. It prefers what is new, what is exciting, what is effortless. But growth rarely comes from novelty. It comes from consistency. If you want to improve your focus daily, you must learn the discipline of elimination. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opportunity deserves your involvement. Not every conversation deserves your energy. One of the highest forms of wisdom is knowing what to ignore, because what you ignore determines what you amplify. If you ignore distraction, you amplify productivity. If you ignore noise, you amplify clarity. If you ignore unnecessary demands, you amplify purpose. Focus also requires you to confront the internal restlessness that constantly pushes you to switch tasks before completion. Many people mistake this restlessness for creativity, but often it is just lack of mental training. Real focus is the ability to remain committed to a task even when your mind tries to escape discomfort. Because focus is not always comfortable. It demands patience. It demands persistence. It demands the willingness to stay engaged beyond initial excitement. Improving focus daily also means designing your environment intentionally, because your environment either supports your attention or sabotages it. If your environment is full of distractions, your focus will constantly be under attack. But if your environment is structured, minimal, and intentional, focus becomes easier to maintain. You must remove unnecessary interruptions from your physical and digital space, because what surrounds you eventually shapes what controls you. There is also a deeper truth. Focus is closely connected to purpose. When your purpose is unclear, your attention becomes vulnerable. You become easily pulled in different directions because nothing feels more important than anything else. But when purpose is clear, focus becomes natural. You know what matters. You know what to prioritize. You know what to ignore. Purpose creates direction, and direction stabilizes attention. Many people struggle with focus because they have not defined what they are actually building in life. Without a clear destination, every distraction looks like an option. But when your destination is clear, distractions lose their power. You begin to see them for what they are: interruptions to your progress, not opportunities for your attention. Improving focus daily also requires emotional control, because emotions often drive distraction. When you feel bored, you seek stimulation. When you feel stressed, you seek escape. When you feel uncertain, you seek comfort in distraction. But focus requires you to remain steady even when emotions fluctuate. It requires you to choose long-term gain over short-term relief. This is why focus is a form of maturity. It is the ability to delay gratification in favor of meaningful outcomes. Every time you choose to stay focused instead of switching to distraction, you are strengthening your mental discipline. And over time, this discipline compounds into exceptional performance. You must also understand that focus is not about doing everything at once. It is about doing one thing at a time with full presence. Multitasking is often misunderstood as efficiency, but in reality, it fragments attention. When attention is divided, quality decreases. When attention is unified, excellence becomes possible. The human mind is powerful, but it performs best when directed, not scattered. Improving focus daily means training yourself to return to the present moment repeatedly, because distraction pulls you away from the present. It takes your mind into the past, into the future, or into irrelevant stimulation. But focus brings you back to now, the only place where real progress happens. Every meaningful action happens in the present moment. If you lose the present, you lose the opportunity to create results. There is also a silent enemy of focus called internal dialogue. This is the constant mental chatter that pulls you away from what you are doing. Doubts, worries, random thoughts, they all compete for your attention. Part of improving focus is learning to observe these thoughts without obeying them. Not every thought deserves your action. Some thoughts are just noise. And focus is the ability to filter noise from necessity. If you want to improve your focus daily, you must also practice starting what you intend to finish. Procrastination is often a symptom of unfocused attention. The longer you delay action, the more scattered your mind becomes. But when you begin immediately, you create momentum. And momentum strengthens focus. Ultimately, focus is not just a skill, it is a lifestyle. It is how you choose to engage with life every single day. It is the decision to be fully present in what matters and fully absent from what does not. And when you master focus, you begin to experience life differently. You move with clarity. You produce with depth. You act with intention. Because at the highest level, focus is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters with full attention until it is complete. Improving your emotional control daily is one of the most powerful forms of personal mastery you can ever develop. Because your emotions are not just feelings you experience. They are forces that influence your decisions, shape your behavior, and ultimately determine the direction of your life. Many people believe they are making logical decisions, but in reality, they are often reacting emotionally and justifying those reactions afterward with logic. That is why emotional control is not optional if you want to live a stable, purposeful, and successful life. You must understand this clearly. Emotions are not your enemy, but uncontrolled emotions are dangerous. They are natural signals, not final instructions. Feeling anger does not mean you must act in anger. Feeling fear does not mean you must surrender to fear. Feeling sadness does not mean you must be defeated by sadness. Emotional maturity begins when you realize that feelings are temporary, but actions taken under those feelings can have permanent consequences. Improving emotional control daily starts with awareness. You cannot control what you do not observe. Many people live emotionally automatic lives. Something happens, they react instantly, and only later do they think about what they should have done differently. But emotional growth begins when you create a pause between stimulus and response. That pause is where wisdom is formed. That pause is where self-control is built. That pause is where your future is protected. Without emotional control, a person becomes reactive instead of intentional. And a reactive life is a vulnerable life, because anyone or anything can trigger you into decisions you later regret. A reactive person is not leading their life. They are being led by circumstances. But an emotionally controlled person is grounded. They respond instead of react. They think instead of panic. They choose instead of collapse under pressure. One of the most important aspects of emotional control is learning not to trust emotions as absolute truth. Emotions are real, but they are not always accurate. They are influenced by fatigue, environment, stress, memory, and perception. What feels true in a moment of frustration may not actually be true in reality. That is why emotionally controlled individuals learn to question their emotions instead of obeying them blindly. Improving emotional control daily also means learning to delay emotional expression when necessary. Not everything that you feel needs to be spoken immediately. Not every reaction needs to be expressed instantly. Sometimes wisdom is silence. Sometimes strength is restraint. Sometimes power is choosing not to react at all in the moment. Because many conflicts, mistakes, and regrets are born from impulsive emotional expression. You must also recognize that emotional control is closely connected to identity. If you identify as someone who cannot control anger, you will continue to behave that way. If you identify as someone who is easily overwhelmed, you will continue to be overwhelmed. But when you begin to shift your identity toward emotional strength, you start to behave differently. You begin to see yourself as someone who can remain calm under pressure, someone who can think clearly even in chaos, someone who does not lose control when emotions rise. There is a hidden strength in emotional control that most people never fully appreciate. It protects your relationships. Many relationships are damaged not by lack of love, but by lack of emotional discipline. Words spoken in anger, decisions made in frustration, and actions taken in emotional heat often create damage that takes years to repair. Emotional control is therefore not just personal development, it is relational wisdom. Improving emotional control daily also requires you to understand your emotional triggers. Everyone has patterns that activate strong emotional responses. For some, it is criticism. For others, it is rejection. For others, it is uncertainty or loss of control. If you do not understand your triggers, you will remain vulnerable to them. But when you identify them, you gain the ability to prepare for them, manage them, and eventually master them. Another essential aspect of emotional control is learning to regulate your internal dialogue. The way you talk to yourself in moments of pressure shapes how you respond externally. If your internal voice is chaotic, your external behavior will be chaotic. But if your internal voice is calm, grounded, and rational, your external actions will reflect that stability. Emotional control is not just about suppressing feelings. It is about guiding your internal narrative toward clarity instead of chaos. You must also understand that emotional control does not mean emotional suppression. Suppression is unhealthy because it ignores emotions. Control, on the other hand, acknowledges emotions but does not allow them to dominate decisions. It is the difference between recognizing anger and being controlled by anger. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion, it is the governance of emotion. Improving emotional control daily also involves building patience. Impatience is often an emotional state disguised as urgency. Many mistakes happen not because people lack knowledge, but because they lack patience. Emotional control allows you to wait for clarity before acting. It allows you to avoid rushing into decisions that are driven by temporary emotional pressure. There is also a strong connection between emotional control and resilience. Life will always present challenges, disappointments, and unexpected events. Emotional control does not eliminate these experiences, but it determines how you respond to them. A person without emotional control breaks under pressure. A person with emotional control bends but does not break. They process emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. Daily emotional improvement also requires reflection. At the end of the day, emotionally mature individuals review their reactions. They ask themselves, where did I lose control today? What triggered me? How could I have responded better? This reflection turns experience into growth. Without reflection, emotional patterns remain unchanged. With reflection, emotional patterns evolve. You must also understand that emotional control increases your power in life. Not power over others, but power over yourself. And self-control is the highest form of strength. Anyone can react. Anyone can be angry. Anyone can be emotional. But not everyone can remain steady when emotions rise. That steadiness is what builds respect, stability, and leadership. Ultimately, improving emotional control daily is about mastering the space between feeling and action. It is about refusing to let temporary emotional waves dictate permanent life decisions. It is about becoming someone who can feel deeply but still act wisely. And when you reach that level, you are no longer controlled by your emotions. You are guided by your purpose. Improving your communication daily is not just about speaking better. It is about expressing your inner world with clarity, precision, and purpose. Communication is one of the most powerful forces in human life because it determines how you are understood, how you are perceived, and how your ideas are received by the world. Many people have value inside them, but they fail to communicate it effectively, and as a result, their value remains hidden. You must understand this deeply. Your life expands or contracts based on how well you communicate. Opportunities respond to communication. Relationships respond to communication. Leadership is built on communication. Even your personal confidence is influenced by how well you can articulate your thoughts. If you cannot express what you carry inside, the world will never fully engage with your potential. Improving communication daily begins with clarity of thought. You cannot communicate clearly if your mind is unclear. Confused thinking produces confused speaking. That is why communication improvement is not only about speech, it begins in the mind. When your thoughts are organized, your words naturally become organized. But when your thoughts are scattered, your communication becomes unclear and people struggle to understand you even when your intentions are good. Many people assume communication is only about speaking fluently, but true communication is about being understood. understood. Fluency without clarity is noise, but clarity, even with simple words, creates impact. You do not need complex vocabulary to communicate powerfully. You need intentional expression. The goal is not to impress, it is to connect, to transfer meaning, and to influence understanding. Improving communication daily also requires you to become intentional with your words. Words are not just sounds, they are carriers of meaning, emotion, and influence. Every word you speak either builds trust or destroys it. Every sentence either adds clarity or creates confusion. Every conversation either strengthens relationships or weakens them. That is why careless communication creates unnecessary problems in life. One of the most important aspects of communication is listening. Many people think communication is speaking, but true communication is first listening. When you listen properly, you understand deeply. And when you understand deeply, you respond wisely. Poor communication often comes from poor listening. When people do not listen fully, they respond partially, and that creates misunderstanding. Improving communication daily means developing the discipline of listening without interruption, without assumption, and without preparing your response before the other person finishes speaking. Listening is not passive, it is active understanding. It requires patience, attention, and respect. When you become a better listener, you automatically become a better communicator because your responses become more accurate and meaningful. Another key part of communication is emotional awareness. The tone of your voice, the timing of your words, and the emotional state behind your message all influence how your communication is received. You can say the right thing in the wrong way and still create conflict. That is why emotional intelligence is deeply connected to communication. It is not just what you say, but how you say it and when you say it. Improving communication daily also involves removing unnecessary words. Many people weaken their message by over-explaining, over-justifying, or speaking without purpose. Effective communication is often simple and direct. It does not waste words. It delivers meaning efficiently. When you learn to speak with precision, people begin to pay more attention to you because your words carry weight. You must also understand that communication reflects identity. The way you speak tells people how you see yourself. If your communication is unclear, hesitant, or overly defensive, people perceive uncertainty. But when your communication is clear, calm, and confident, people perceive strength. This does not mean arrogance, it means certainty in expression. Improving communication daily also requires courage. Many people know what they want to say but hesitate to say it clearly. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, or fear of conflict often weakens communication. But unspoken truth creates internal pressure, while expressed truth creates clarity. You must develop the courage to speak honestly, respectfully, and clearly, even when it is uncomfortable. There is also a powerful truth about communication. It shapes relationships more than intentions do. You may have good intentions, but if your communication is poor, people will misunderstand you. And misunderstanding creates distance. That is why many relationships fail, not because of bad intentions, but because of poor communication patterns. Improving communication daily also means learning timing. There is a time to speak and a time to remain silent. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Speaking at the wrong time can create conflict, even if the message is correct. But speaking at the right time can create understanding, even if the message is difficult. Timing gives power to words. You must also recognize that communication is not only external, it is also internal. The way you speak to yourself shapes your confidence, your decisions, and your emotional state. If your internal communication is negative, your external communication will reflect insecurity. But if your internal communication is constructive, your external communication becomes more confident and stable. Improving communication daily also involves feedback. You must learn to observe how people respond to your communication. Do they understand you? Do they misinterpret you? Do they engage with you or withdraw? Feedback is not criticism, it is information. It helps you refine how you express yourself so that your message becomes more effective over time. Another important aspect is adaptability. Not everyone communicates the same way. Some people respond better to direct communication, others to detailed explanations, others to emotional expression. Improving communication means learning to adjust your style without losing your authenticity. It is not about changing who you are. It is about increasing your effectiveness with different people. Ultimately, communication is power because it translates thought into reality. Without communication, your ideas remain trapped inside you. but through communication, your ideas become shared, understood, and acted upon. That is why improving communication daily is not optional. It is essential for growth, leadership, and influence. When you master communication, you begin to experience a shift in your life. Doors open more easily. Relationships become clearer. Opportunities become more accessible. Because when you can express yourself clearly, the world can finally respond to what you truly carry inside you. Improving your habits daily is one of the most important investments you can ever make in your life, because your habits are not just actions you repeat. They are the invisible system that determines your future without requiring your daily permission. Many people believe their life is shaped by big decisions, but in reality, life is shaped by small, repeated actions that eventually become identity. What you repeatedly do, you eventually become. You must understand this clearly. Your habits are your life on autopilot. They operate even when you are not consciously thinking. When you wake up, what you do first is a habit. How you respond to stress is a habit. How you spend your free time is a habit. Even your thinking patterns are influenced by habits formed over time. That is why improving your habits daily is not optional. It is essential for transformation. Most people struggle in life not because they lack intelligence or opportunity, but because their habits are misaligned with their goals. They desire success but practice inconsistency. They desire health but repeat unhealthy behaviors. They desire discipline but continue undisciplined routines. This conflict between desire and habit creates frustration because you cannot live one way and expect another result. Improving habits daily begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not recognize. Many people move through life unconsciously repeating patterns they never question. They never stop to ask, is this habit helping me grow or holding me back? Is this behavior building my future or delaying it? Awareness is the first step toward transformation, because once you see your habits clearly, you can no longer ignore them. There is a powerful truth about habits. They are formed through repetition, not intensity. A single powerful action does not create change, but repeated small actions do. You do not become successful in one moment. You become successful through consistent behavior. That is why even small habits, when repeated daily, can completely reshape a person's life over time. Improving habits daily also requires understanding the difference between motivation and structure. Motivation is temporary. It rises and falls based on emotion, environment, and circumstances. But habits are structural. They do not depend on how you feel. They depend on what you consistently do. That is why relying on motivation alone leads to inconsistency, but building habits leads to stability. You must also understand that habits are shaped by identity. You do not just form habits. You form habits based on how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who is inconsistent, you will behave inconsistently. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, you will begin to act in alignment with discipline. That is why lasting habit change begins with identity change. You must first change how you see yourself before your behavior fully transforms. Improving habits daily means becoming intentional with your routines. Your morning habits set the tone for your entire day. Your evening habits determine the quality of your rest and preparation for the next day. If your daily structure is chaotic, your life will reflect that chaos. But if your daily structure is intentional, your life begins to move with order and clarity. Many people underestimate the power of small habits. They think small actions do not matter, but small habits are powerful because they are easy to repeat. And what is easy to repeat becomes permanent over time. A small habit like reading a few pages daily, waking up at a consistent time, or organizing your environment may seem insignificant, but over months and years, these actions create massive transformation. Improving habits daily also requires breaking destructive patterns. Some habits do not just slow growth, they actively destroy progress. These may include procrastination, excessive distraction, negative thinking, poor time management, or unhealthy routines. Breaking these habits requires awareness, discipline, and replacement. Because habits cannot simply be removed, they must be replaced with better alternatives. You cannot just stop a habit, you must substitute it. For example, if you want to reduce distraction, you must replace it with focused activity. If you want to stop procrastination, intention, you must replace it with immediate action. The mind does not respond well to emptiness. It needs structure. So every habit you remove must be replaced with something constructive. Another important aspect of improving habits daily is consistency over perfection. Many people fail to build good habits because they expect perfection from the beginning. But habits are not built through perfection. They are built through repetition, even when imperfect. What matters is not doing it perfectly, but doing it consistently. Over time, consistency refines performance. You must also understand that your environment plays a major role in shaping your habits. If your environment supports distraction, distraction becomes easier. If your environment supports discipline, discipline becomes easier. That is why improving habits also involves adjusting your surroundings, what you see, what you access, and what you engage with regularly. Improving habits daily also requires patience. Habits do not change overnight. They take time to form and time to break. Many people give up too early because they expect immediate transformation. But real change is gradual. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize your behavior has completely shifted. There is also a deep connection between habits and destiny. Your future is not created by one major action, but by thousands of small actions repeated over time. That means your destiny is being built every single day through your habits. Every choice you make is either reinforcing your future or weakening it. Improving habits daily means becoming aware that you are always training yourself. Every repeated action is training your identity. If you repeatedly choose discipline, you are training discipline. If you repeatedly choose distraction, you are training distraction. Life is always in training mode, whether you realize it or not. Ultimately, habits determine the direction of your life because they determine your default behavior. When you are tired, stressed, or distracted, you will fall back to your habits. That is why improving them daily is so important. They become your foundation when your willpower is low. When you master your habits, you stop relying on constant effort and start operating on structure. And when structure takes over, progress becomes natural. That is the power of habits. They quietly build the life you live every day without asking for attention. Improving your relationships daily is one of the most important areas of personal development, because no matter how successful, intelligent, or disciplined you become, your life will always be deeply influenced by the people around you. Human beings are relational by design. You were never created to exist in isolation. Your growth, your emotional stability, your opportunities, and even your mindset are constantly shaped by the quality of your relationships. You must understand this truth clearly. Your life is not only built by what you know, but also by who you connect with. Relationships are not just social interactions, they are environments. And environments either nourish your growth or slowly drain your potential. That is why improving your relationships daily is not optional. It is essential for a meaningful life. Many people struggle in life not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they are surrounded by relationships that do not support their growth. Some relationships drain energy, some limit thinking, and some reinforce negative patterns. If you do not intentionally improve and manage your relationships, you will unconsciously inherit the influence of the people closest to you. Improving relationships daily begins with awareness of influence. Every person in your life is influencing you in some way, whether positively or negatively. Influence is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is subtle, how people talk, how they think, how they respond to challenges. Over time, you begin to mirror the emotional and mental patterns of those you spend the most time with. That is why relationships are powerful. They shape you without asking for permission. One of the most important aspects of improving relationships is choosing alignment over convenience. Many people stay in relationships simply because they are familiar, not because they are healthy. But familiarity does not equal growth. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time does not mean they are aligned with your future. Improvement requires honesty about whether your relationships are helping you evolve or keeping you stagnant. Improving relationships daily also requires emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your own emotions and the emotions of others and respond appropriately. Many relationships fail not because of lack of love, but because of lack of emotional understanding. People speak without thinking, react without reflection, and misunderstand each other because emotional awareness is missing. You must also understand that communication is the foundation of strong relationships. Misunderstandings are often not caused by bad intentions, but by unclear communication. When people do not express themselves clearly, assumptions fill the gap, and assumptions often lead to conflict. Improving relationships daily means learning to express yourself honestly, respectfully, and clearly, while also listening with genuine attention. Listening is one of the most underrated aspects of relationship improvement. Many people listen only to respond, not to understand. But true listening requires patience, presence, and empathy. When you listen deeply, you create space for trust. People feel valued when they feel heard. And when people feel heard, relationships become stronger and more stable. Improving relationships daily also means learning to manage expectations. Many conflicts arise because people expect others to behave exactly as they would behave, or to meet unspoken expectations. But every individual is different, shaped by their own experiences and perspectives. When expectations are unclear or unrealistic, disappointment becomes inevitable. Healthy relationships require clarity, communication, and understanding of differences. You must also understand the importance of boundaries in relationships. Boundaries are not barriers. They are guidelines that protect respect and emotional well-being. Without boundaries, relationships become draining or imbalanced. With boundaries, relationships become healthier and more sustainable. Improving relationships daily means learning when to say yes, when to say no, and when to protect your emotional space. Another key aspect is forgiveness. No relationship is perfect. People make mistakes. Misunderstandings happen. Words are sometimes spoken in moments of emotion. Without forgiveness, relationships cannot grow. But forgiveness does not mean ignoring issues. It means choosing not to let resentment control the relationship. It means allowing room for growth instead of holding on to past pain. Improving relationships daily also involves accountability. Healthy relationships are not built on blame, but on responsibility. Instead of always focusing on what others did wrong, you must also reflect on your own behavior. What can I improve in how I communicate, how I respond, how I contribute to this relationship? Accountability strengthens maturity, and maturity strengthens relationships. You must also recognize the importance of appreciation. Many relationships weaken not because of conflict, but because of neglect. People stop expressing gratitude. They stop acknowledging effort. They stop appreciating presence. Over time, lack of appreciation creates emotional distance. Improving relationships daily means actively expressing gratitude and recognizing the value others bring into your life. There is also a powerful principle. Relationships grow where effort is invested. Strong relationships are not accidental. They are intentional. They require time, attention, care, and consistency. If you do not invest in relationships, they naturally weaken over time. Just like a plant, relationships need consistent care to stay healthy. Improving relationships daily also requires emotional maturity in conflict. Conflict is not the end of a relationship. It is part of growth. But how you handle conflict determines whether relationships strengthen or break. Emotional maturity means staying calm, listening before reacting, and focusing on resolution instead of winning arguments. Because in healthy relationships, the goal is not to win, it is to understand. You must also understand that not all relationships are meant to stay the same forever. Some relationships evolve, some fade, and some require distance. Improving relationships daily includes the wisdom to recognize when change is necessary. Holding on to relationships that no longer serve mutual growth can create emotional exhaustion. Ultimately, improving relationships daily is about becoming someone who adds value, not just receives it. It is about becoming more understanding, more patient, more respectful, and more intentional in how you connect with others. Because at the deepest level, relationships are not just about who is in your life. They are about who you become while interacting with them. When you improve your relationships, you improve your life. Because no success is meaningful without connection, and no achievement is complete without healthy human bonds. Improving your health daily is not simply about fitness or appearance. It is about stewardship of the only physical vessel you have been given to fulfill your purpose in life. Many people talk about success, discipline, and achievement, but they overlook the fact that none of these can be sustained without a functioning body and a stable mind. Your health is not separate from your destiny. It is the physical foundation that carries everything you are trying to build. You must understand this truth deeply. You cannot consistently live a high-quality life with a neglected body. No matter how strong your mindset is, if your physical condition is weak, your performance will eventually be limited. Health is not just about avoiding illness, it is about creating capacity. Capacity to think clearly, to work effectively, to manage emotions, and to pursue your goals with energy and consistency. Improving your health daily begins with understanding that your body is not disposable. Many people treat their bodies as if they are temporary tools that can be abused without consequence. They neglect rest, ignore nutrition, avoid exercise, and still expect long-term productivity. But the body keeps records. Every choice you make regarding your health is either an investment or a withdrawal from your future strength. One of the most important aspects of health improvement is energy management. Your energy determines your output. You can have time, but without energy, time becomes ineffective. Health is what converts time into productivity. If your energy is low, your thinking becomes slow, your emotions become unstable, and your discipline weakens. But when your health is strong, everything else becomes easier to manage. Improving health daily means being intentional about what you consume. Food is not just pleasure, it is information for your body. What you eat directly affects your mental clarity, emotional balance, and physical performance. Many people underestimate this connection and consume without awareness. But over time, your body reflects your choices. You cannot repeatedly consume poor quality input and expect high quality output from your body. Rest is another critical part of health that is often ignored. Many people believe that constant activity equals productivity, but without proper rest, productivity declines. Sleep is not a luxury, it is a biological necessity. It is during rest that your body repairs, restores, and strengthens itself. If you consistently deprive your body of rest, you are weakening the very system that supports your ambitions. Improving health daily also requires movement. The human body was designed for activity, not stagnation. When the body is inactive for long periods, it begins to lose strength, flexibility, and efficiency. Movement is not just about exercise, it is about maintaining functionality. Walking, stretching, training, or any form of physical activity keeps the body aligned with its natural design. A strong body supports a strong mind. You must also understand the connection between health and mental clarity. Your physical state influences your thinking more than most people realize. When your body is tired, your decisions become weaker. When your body is unhealthy, your focus becomes unstable. But when your body is well maintained, your mind becomes sharper, more stable, and more capable of handling pressure. Improving health daily also means managing stress. Stress is not just emotional, it is physical. Chronic stress affects your heart, your sleep, your immune system, and your overall performance. But many people live under constant pressure without learning how to release it. But unmanaged stress slowly erodes health over time. Learning to pause, breathe, and reset is not weakness. It is maintenance of your system. Another important aspect of health is consistency. Health is not built in one intense effort. It is built through daily patterns. Small actions repeated daily, hydration, movement, balanced eating, proper rest, create long-term strength. Many people try extreme changes for short periods, but sustainability is what truly builds health. Consistency always outperforms intensity when it comes to long-term well-being. Improving health daily also requires self-awareness. You must learn to listen to your body. Fatigue, discomfort, and imbalance are signals, not inconveniences. When you ignore these signals, your body eventually forces you to stop. But when you respond early, you prevent larger problems. Self-awareness in health is about respecting limits and adjusting behavior before breakdown occurs. You must also recognize that health is deeply connected to discipline. What you do in private when no one is watching determines your physical condition. Discipline in health means choosing water over excessive sugar, rest over unnecessary stress, movement over laziness. These decisions seem small, but over time they determine whether your body supports your vision or resists it. Improving health daily also includes mental health. Your thoughts, emotions, and internal state affect your physical well-being. Negative thinking patterns, unresolved stress, and emotional instability all influence your body. That is why health is not only physical, it is holistic. A healthy life requires alignment between body, mind, and emotional state. Another key truth is that health determines consistency in all other areas of life. You cannot be disciplined, focused, or productive if your health is constantly declining. A weak body demands attention, while a strong body supports execution. That is why neglecting health eventually affects every other area of personal development. Improving health daily is also about prevention, not just correction. Many people wait until problems arise before they take health seriously. But wisdom lies in prevention. Taking care of your body before it breaks is far more effective than trying to repair it after damage is done. Prevention is quiet discipline practiced daily. You must also understand that your body is connected to your purpose. Whatever vision you have for your life requires physical capacity. Whether it is leadership, service, creativity, or impact, your body is the vehicle that carries your assignment. If the vehicle is weak, the journey becomes difficult. But if the vehicle is strong, the journey becomes sustainable. Ultimately, improving your health daily is about respect for your life, your future, and your responsibility. It is about recognizing that your body is not separate from your destiny, but central to it. When you care for your health, you are not just extending your life, you are strengthening your ability to fulfill it. A healthy life does not happen by accident. It is built intentionally, day by day, choice by choice, discipline by discipline. And when you commit to improving your health daily, you are not just maintaining your body, you are preparing your life for endurance, strength, and sustained purpose. Improving your knowledge daily is one of the most powerful investments you can make in your life, because knowledge is not just information, it is power that shapes perception, decision-making, and opportunity. A person's level of knowledge determines how they interpret life, how they respond to challenges, and how they position themselves in the world. Without continuous learning, even the most talented individual eventually becomes outdated in a world that is constantly evolving. You must understand this clearly. Life does not reward potential alone. It rewards applied understanding. Knowledge is what transforms potential into performance. It is the bridge between ignorance and wisdom, between confusion and clarity, between limitation and expansion. Every advancement in your life will always be connected to something you learned, understood, or discovered at some point. Improving knowledge daily begins with the recognition that learning never ends. Many people stop learning after formal education, believing that knowledge is something completed in school. But in reality, school is only the foundation. Life is the real classroom, and it never closes. Every day presents new lessons, new insights, and new opportunities for understanding. The moment you stop learning, you begin to fall behind, even if you do not realize it immediately. One of the most important aspects of knowledge improvement is curiosity. Curiosity is the internal desire to understand more, to go deeper, and to question what is not yet clear. Without curiosity, learning becomes passive. But with curiosity, learning becomes active and transformative. Curious minds do not settle for surface-level understanding. They seek depth, and depth creates wisdom, not just information. Improving knowledge daily also requires intentional learning habits. Knowledge does not accumulate automatically. It must be pursued. Reading, observing, listening, and reflecting are all tools of learning. The most successful individuals in any field are not necessarily the most gifted, but the most committed to continuous learning. They understand that every day without learning is a day of missed growth. You must also understand that knowledge is not just about collecting information, it is about applying it. Many people consume information but never transform it into action. They read, watch, or listen, but nothing changes in their behavior. True knowledge becomes powerful only when it is applied. Application is what turns understanding into experience, and experience is what creates mastery. Improving knowledge daily also involves being selective about what you learn. Not all information is valuable. Some information expands your thinking, while other information distracts it. In a world filled with constant noise, the ability to filter knowledge becomes essential. You must focus on learning what contributes to your growth, your purpose, and your development, rather than consuming information that has no meaningful impact on your life. Another important aspect is consistency. Learning is not something you do occasionally when you feel motivated. It is a daily discipline. Even small amounts of learning every day accumulate over time into significant transformation. A few pages of reading, a meaningful conversation, or a moment of reflection may seem small in the moment, but over months and years, these small inputs create major intellectual growth. Improving knowledge daily also requires humility. You cannot learn effectively if you believe you already know everything. Pride blocks learning. It creates resistance to new ideas and prevents growth. But humility opens the mind. It allows you to admit what you do not know and remain open to correction, expansion, and refinement. The more humble you are, the more you can learn. You must also recognize that experience is a form of knowledge. Life itself teaches lessons that cannot be learned from books alone. Every challenge, mistake, and success contains information. The key is reflection. Without reflection, experience passes without learning. But when you reflect on what happens in your life, you extract wisdom from it. That is how experience becomes knowledge. Improving knowledge daily also means engaging with people who think differently from you. Conversations are powerful sources of learning. When you interact with others who have different perspectives, you expand your understanding of life. Diversity of thought challenges your assumptions and broadens your mental framework. This is how intellectual growth happens, through exposure to different ways of thinking. Another key principle is that knowledge evolves. What is true today may be refined tomorrow. That is why continuous learning is necessary. You cannot rely on outdated understanding in a changing world. Industries change, technologies change, and societies evolve. If your knowledge remains static, your relevance decreases. But if your knowledge continues to grow, your adaptability increases. Improving knowledge daily also strengthens decision making. Every decision you make is influenced by what you know. Better knowledge leads to better decisions. Poor knowledge leads to poor decisions. Many life mistakes are not caused by bad intentions, but by limited understanding. As your knowledge expands, your ability to make wise decisions improves naturally. You must also understand that knowledge builds confidence. When you know more, you fear less. Uncertainty decreases when understanding increases. Many fears are rooted in ignorance. As knowledge grows, clarity replaces confusion, and confidence becomes a natural outcome. You begin to navigate life with more assurance because you understand what you are doing and why you are doing it. Improving knowledge daily also creates opportunity. In every field, opportunities go to those who are informed, prepared, and aware. Knowledge allows you to recognize opportunities that others may overlook. It equips you to respond effectively when opportunities arise. Without knowledge, opportunities pass unnoticed. With knowledge, opportunities become accessible. There is also a deep connection between knowledge and leadership. A person cannot lead effectively without understanding. Leadership requires insight, awareness, and the ability to guide others. Knowledge gives you the tools to influence, support, and direct. That is why leaders are lifelong learners. They understand that their effectiveness depends on their growth. Ultimately, improving your knowledge daily is about becoming someone who never stops evolving mentally. It is about refusing stagnation and embracing growth as a continuous process. It is about recognizing that every day carries the potential to expand your understanding of life, yourself, and the world around you. When you commit to daily learning, you are not just gaining information, you are shaping your future capacity. Because the more you know, the more you can do, the more you can influence, and the more you can become. Knowledge is not just power, it is progression. Improving your awareness of purpose daily is perhaps the most defining key point of all, because without purpose, everything else loses direction. You can be disciplined, knowledgeable, emotionally controlled, and even productive. But if you do not understand why you are doing what you are doing, your life becomes motion without meaning. Purpose is not just a motivational idea. It is the internal compass that gives direction to every decision, every sacrifice, and every effort you make. You must understand this truth deeply. A life without purpose becomes a life of distraction. When purpose is unclear, everything looks important and nothing feels essential. You begin to chase opportunities without alignment. You begin to engage in activities without clarity. You become busy but not effective. Purpose is what separates activity from achievement. It is what transforms effort into impact. Improving purpose awareness daily begins with reflection. You must regularly ask yourself, why am I doing what I am doing? What am I building with my life? What impact do I want to leave behind? These are not casual questions. They are foundational questions. Because without reflection, you can easily drift into routines that consume your time but do not contribute to your meaning. Many people live reactively instead of intentionally. They respond to circumstances, pressures, and expectations without ever pausing to evaluate alignment. They follow trends, pursue temporary goals, and adopt paths that were never truly chosen with clarity. Over time, this creates internal dissatisfaction even when external progress appears, because success without purpose always feels incomplete. Improving purpose awareness daily also means learning to distinguish between urgency and importance. Not everything that demands your attention deserves your life energy. Purpose helps you filter. It helps you identify what truly matters and what is merely noise. When purpose is clear, decisions become simpler. You no longer need to debate every option. You measure everything against your direction. You must also understand that purpose is not something you randomly discover in one moment of inspiration. It is something that becomes clearer over time through experience, reflection, and growth. Many people expect purpose to appear suddenly, but in reality, purpose is revealed gradually as you engage with life, learn about yourself, and recognize what resonates deeply within you. Improving purpose awareness daily requires you to pay attention to what consistently moves your heart, your mind, and your attention. Often, purpose is connected to patterns, things you naturally care about, problems you feel drawn to solve, or contributions you feel compelled to make. These patterns are not accidental. They are signals that guide you toward direction. Another important aspect is understanding that purpose is larger than personal benefit. If your life focus is only self-centered, your sense of purpose will remain limited. But when you begin to see your life in terms of contribution, how you can serve, improve, or impact others, purpose expands. True purpose always extends beyond the self. It connects your personal growth to something greater than personal gain. Improving purpose awareness daily also involves eliminating distractions that pull you away from alignment. Distraction is not just about wasting time, it is about losing direction. When you repeatedly engage in activities that do not align with your deeper purpose, you begin to feel disconnected from meaning. That is why discipline and purpose are closely connected. Discipline protects purpose from being diluted. You must also recognize that purpose gives strength during difficulty. Life will always include challenges, setbacks, and uncertainty. Without purpose, these challenges feel like reasons to quit. But with purpose, challenges become part of the process. Purpose gives meaning to struggle. It allows you to endure discomfort because you understand what you are building is greater than what you are facing. Improving purpose awareness daily also requires alignment between your actions and your values. Many people feel internal conflict because their daily actions do not reflect what they truly believe is important. This misalignment creates frustration, but when your actions are aligned with your values, there is inner peace, even in difficulty. Purpose creates coherence between who you are and what you do. Reflection plays a critical role here as well. At the end of each day, asking yourself whether your actions aligned with your purpose helps strengthen awareness. Over time, this reflection builds clarity. You begin to notice patterns in your behavior and gradually adjust your direction. Purpose becomes not just an idea but a lived experience. Another key aspect is growth. Purpose is not static, it evolves as you evolve. As you gain knowledge, experience, and maturity, your understanding of purpose deepens. What you once thought was your direction may expand or shift into something greater. That is why continuous self-awareness is necessary. You cannot rely on old definitions of purpose in a growing life. Improving purpose awareness daily also helps you manage time more effectively. When you are unclear about purpose, time becomes scattered. But when purpose is clear, time becomes structured. You begin to prioritize differently. You begin to say no more easily. You begin to focus on what truly contributes to your long-term direction instead of short-term distractions. You must also understand that purpose brings motivation that does not depend on emotion. Motivation based on feelings is unstable, but motivation based on purpose is stable. Even when you are tired or discouraged, purpose keeps you moving because you understand the significance of what you're doing. Purpose sustains effort when emotions cannot. Improving purpose awareness daily also influences identity. When you live with purpose, you begin to see yourself differently. You are no longer someone who is just passing time. You are someone who is building something meaningful. This shift in identity affects your decisions, your habits, and your confidence. You begin to act with greater intentionality because your identity is anchored in meaning. Ultimately, purpose awareness is what brings coherence to all the other key points. Discipline becomes meaningful because of purpose. Focus becomes directed because of purpose. Habits become aligned because of purpose. Health, knowledge, communication, and relationships all gain direction when purpose is present. Without purpose, life becomes fragmented. With purpose, life becomes unified. Everything begins to move in the same direction. And when your life has direction, even small actions begin to carry significance. Improving your awareness of purpose daily is not about finding a single answer. It is about continually realigning yourself with meaning. It is about living intentionally, reflecting honestly, and adjusting consistently. Because a life guided by purpose is not just a life lived, it is a life that matters.